Hello?
Hello?
Yes.
I just found a body there. It's in the water.
Whereabouts in the water?
See where St Martin's Primary School is?
St Martin's?
Yes, in Renton.
Whereabouts is St Martin's Primary School? Do you know the street it's on, no?
No, it's on the leaving. It's on the leaving.
Aye, I know it's in the, I know the body's not leaving. But it's in the water near the school, is it?
It's right next to it, aye.
Is it? Do you know, is it a male or a female?
I think that you see the young boys that's down there with me? Well, they think they know who it is because of the training shoes. The pair of training shoes lying on the grass. Right? And the body's lying in the water. It was this man that was pointing to us when we were going down. He said, is that a body or is it a dummy? So I went down a wee bit. I was looking, I seen the training shoes and I was looking, but the horns looked like a dummy. But it is a body. It's definitely a person.
Male or female?
Female.
On August 25, 1996, a frightened man made a disturbing 999 call to the authorities in Bonhill, Scotland. What he initially thought to be a discarded mannequin turned out to be the lifeless body of a young girl floating face down in the dark waters of Leven River. Who was this girl? How did she end up in the river? Was it an accident or something far more disturbing? The investigation that followed uncovered a dark secret that shocked the community and left a lasting scar on the town of Bonhill. Quickly arriving at the scene, the police called for divers to recover the body from the river. When they pulled the young girl out of the water, they were shocked by what they saw. Her skull had severe injuries, indicative of a brutal beating. It became clear that this was no accident. Someone had cruelly attacked the girl and left her in the river to die. Her sneakers were also found on the riverbank near her body. These sneakers and the sweatshirt she was wearing helped identify her as Caroline Glachan, a 14-year-old girl from Bonhill. The police also noticed that there was some blood on the towpath, which indicated that she had been attacked while she was walking along the river. Her attacker then threw her in the water where she drowned. A carefree teenager known for her bubbly personality and infectious laughter had been brutally snatched away. As detectives delved into Caroline's life, they began to uncover a web of teenage relationships, rivalries, and secrets that lay hidden beneath the surface of their quiet town. The investigation would be long and hard, plagued by false leads and dead ends. But one thing was certain. Someone in Bonhill knew the truth about what happened to Caroline Glachan, and the truth, when it finally emerged, would be more shocking than anyone could have imagined. Caroline Glachan was born on January 8, 1982 in Derry, Northern Ireland. She was the only child of William and Margaret Glachan, who had gone through 5 heartbreaking miscarriages before her birth. Her arrival was a cherished and much-awaited addition to the family. Caroline grew up to be a wonderful young girl, always happy and ready to lend a helping hand. She loved parties, makeup, and music. Celine Dion, Liam Gallagher, and Tracy Chapman were her favorite singers. Like many teenagers, Caroline could be a bit blunt, but her honesty was always refreshing. With her playful humor and energetic spirit, she easily made friends and had a wide circle of them. Caroline was also incredibly brave and always stood up for what she believed in. She once protected a friend from bullies who were targeting him for being gay. Everyone knew her as a kind, lovely girl who was full of life. Even though Caroline's parents separated when she was 7, both William and Margaret remained equally devoted to her. She frequently spent time with her father, who was living in Edinburgh at the time. She was very family-oriented, and her family meant a lot to her. Her parents were her best friends, and she was very close to them.
She was an affectionate child. She always kissed and cuddled before she went to bed, before she went out. She never failed. She even did it with her grandparents. Caroline, she was unique. She was unique to me.
At the time of her death, Caroline was a 4th-year student at Our Lady and St. Patrick's High School. She wanted to be a teacher when she grew up.
On Saturday, August the 24th, Caroline spent the afternoon visiting friends on both sides of the Leven, and shortly after 9 that evening, she took her normal route home along the river.
Her mother, Margaret, was going to Glasgow that evening with her fiancé, to celebrate her 40th birthday.
We were going out later on that night, and she asked if Joanne could stay. I said, of course. So she was going out the door, and I asked her where she was going. She says, I'm going to get Joanne. I said, right, well, fine, but mind your time. Yes, Mum, yes. You know, in that sort of dismissive kind of way teenagers have, so. And that was the last I saw her.
Caroline and Joanna were last seen together at the Ladyton shops, along with 2 other friends. It was common for them to stay out until midnight during the summer, and Margaret, like many other mothers in the area, was comfortable with that. At around 11:30 p.m., Caroline told Joanne she was going to meet her boyfriend in Renton. She planned to walk along the Leven River towpath to get there since it was a shortcut. This towpath was under the Black Bridge, also known as the Dillichip Bridge. Even though Caroline had known this path all her life and could practically see it from her home, she was usually nervous about it. But that night she wasn't. She was happy and cheerful, looking forward to meeting her boyfriend. Caroline enjoyed the company of older kids, and an 18-year-old named Robert O'Brien from Renton had recently become her boyfriend. Margaret and Joanne disapproved of the relationship. O'Brien was into drugs and already had a girlfriend, Donna Marie Brand, who was pregnant with his child at the time. Joanne didn't like O'Brien and felt he ill-treated Caroline. She thought the relationship was violent and had stopped him from attacking Caroline on numerous occasions. Margaret had even warned O'Brien to stay away from Caroline. She believed he was too old for her. At 14, a 4-year age gap can be significant. She didn't understand why O'Brien was so interested in Caroline and felt he had too much influence over her. It's natural for a young girl to be drawn to an older boy, and sneaking out to see them might seem exciting. However, no one could have predicted the tragic outcome of Caroline's decision. She was taking a familiar shortcut to visit her boyfriend in a nearby town. This path was well known to locals, so no one would have imagined the danger it posed. Joanne, aware of how Margaret would react if Caroline was late, tried to convince her to stay. She didn't want to face Margaret's anger if Caroline wasn't home when she returned. But Caroline handed Joanne her house keys and left, promising that she would be back home by 2 a.m. before her mother came back.
Margaret came in, woke me up, asked me where Caroline was. I told her where she'd went.
But the next morning I thought, oh, she'll phone, with some excuse, or she'll phone her sister, or she'll phone somebody to come with her to break the ice. But the phone call didn't come. Then I got angry, and then I got worried.
In the morning, I just got dressed, went home. I came back again at 7 o'clock, went up to see Margaret, and Margaret says, no, she's still no back. Phoned the police, gave a description, and I had such a feeling, a pain actually it was in my heart, and all I could do was rock because I knew something was wrong.
By now, rumours were sweeping the area that a body had been found in the River Leven.
I met a larger group of friends who then told me that Caroline's body had been found. I didn't want to believe it, but I went back up to tell Margaret. So I tried to reassure her that, not to be daft, that if that was, I says, I would know. Surely I would have known by now. I says, you know what this place is like for rumours. So she says, right, I'll go and get her. So she went away. And as I walked back in the living room and at the window, the police car drew up. Then I knew. I just knew it was her.
At around 4:30 p.m. on August 25th, 1996, Caroline's body was found in the Leven River, just a mile from her 186 Ladyton estate home in Bonhill. Locals identified her from her sneakers and blue chippy sweatshirt. She had sustained extensive injuries to her scalp, face, and neck from blunt force trauma. An autopsy later revealed that she had suffered at least 10 blows to the head that resulted in extensive skull fractures. However, the cause of her death was reported as drowning. She had been unconscious but alive when she was thrown into the water. Passed out and unable to swim due to the severity of her injuries, Caroline drowned in the Leven. Even though her body was discovered in an area frequented by drug dealers, there was no evidence to suggest her death was drug-related. No traces of drugs or alcohol were found during the autopsy. There was no evidence of a sexual assault either. Blood, which was later confirmed to be Caroline's, was also found on the riverbank near her body. This meant that whoever killed her was easily able to overpower her, silence her, and dispose of her within minutes. It raised some immediate questions. Was the killer waiting for her? Was she just in the wrong place at the wrong time? Did Caroline know her killer? With not much forensic evidence to go on, the police started carrying out door-to-door inquiries. Furthermore, police divers carefully searched the river for potential clues, while fingerprint experts combed the riverbank for any evidence that could identify the killer. To recreate Caroline's final movements, the police retraced her route from the Ladyton shops in Bonhill to Renton. Every step was analyzed, every detail examined, in the hope of finding that one crucial piece of evidence that had been overlooked. She was last seen by a taxi driver at 15 minutes past midnight, walking down Dillachip Lane toward the Black Bridge and then onto the river towpath. William Gardner, the taxi driver, told the police that she was walking at a normal pace and did not look upset. Gardner also saw a hooded figure further down the street, walking about 30 yards behind Caroline. He was wearing a green hooded jacket covering half of his face. He seemed to be between 20 to 25 years old and had a distinctive chin and nose. To identify the mysterious hooded figure, a composite sketch was released to the public. With no other suspect at the time, this person became the prime suspect in the murder of Caroline Glachan. However, this person was never found or identified. Another witness, whose home was just a few yards from the river, reported being woken up by 2 loud screams. He looked out his window but couldn't see anything in the dark, so he went back to bed hoping whoever it was all right. Caroline's boyfriend, Robbie O'Brien, was also questioned by the police, since Caroline was going to meet him before she died. He claimed to have spent the night of her murder at Betty Wilson's flat on 12 Allen Street. 3 of his friends, Andrew Kelly, Donna Marie Brand, and Sarah Jane O'Neill, were also there with him. Kelly and his girlfriend O'Neill were babysitting Betty Wilson's 2 young sons, Archie and Jamie, that night. O'Brien and his girlfriend Brand had joined them there, and all 4 of them stayed in the flat overnight. O'Brien's statement was confirmed by his friends, and he was ruled out as a suspect due to lack of evidence. Besides finding her killer, the police were also trying to determine why Caroline was killed. Despite typical teenage rebelliousness, Caroline was known for her intelligence and sound judgment. Nothing in the way she lived her life could have made her a target of such a merciless attack. So the question was, why would anyone want to murder Caroline on that August night? What was the reason behind the killing? Given that Caroline's shoes were found on the riverbank near her body, a theory was floated that Caroline could have been carrying drugs for someone in her shoes. Had she unwittingly become a drug mule for the older group she was spending more and more time with? Was she walking barefoot before she was attacked? Did she kick off her shoes to run away from her attacker? Sadly, the answers to these questions were never known. Caroline's family and the investigators made heartfelt requests to the public, urging anyone with any information to come forward.
I'm really just here to ask anybody that saw anything, heard anything. She was my only friend. Somebody must know something.
I know how close-knit Renton is, but we'd ask them to come out and tell the police what they know, because it's a 14-year-old kid is involved.
They believed that Caroline's killer was a local, someone deeply familiar with the area. The shortcut that she was using wouldn't have been known to somebody from outside of the area. They also felt that the killer was being protected by those who knew him. Otherwise, given the size of the community and the door-to-door inquiry carried out by the police, the culprit should have been found. Since the police inquiry was ongoing, Caroline's body was initially kept in the mortuary so that the lawyers of the culprit could get their own autopsy done if needed. However, with no solid leads even after 6 months, the police handed over her body to her parents so that they could give her a proper goodbye. On the wet and cloudy morning of February 26, 1997, Caroline was buried at River Leven Cemetery. Her headstone overlooked the very river that was the scene of her tragic death. More than 500 people attended her requiem mass at St. Ronan's Church to say their final goodbyes. On the first anniversary of Caroline's death, her parents and friends again made emotional appeals to the public for anyone who knew anything to come forward.
I'm asking myself why I bought my daughter a headstone instead of a school uniform. I know somebody out there knows both the answer to that. And to them I would say, what kind of person are you? How can you live with yourself? It's not going to go away even if you shut your eyes. And neither is the police.
Despite interviewing more than 1,300 people, the police were unable to identify those responsible for Caroline's murder. No new leads emerged, and unfortunately, the case went cold. Then in June 2019, Police Scotland's major investigation team, led by Detective Inspector Stuart Granger, reopened Caroline's case, bringing new hope for justice. However, the team faced major challenges from the beginning. There was no digital evidence like phones or computers to analyze. CCTV footage from 1996 was limited and not very helpful. They had no DNA profile of the suspects and no murder weapon. Investigators explored the theory of Caroline being followed by a hooded man, but ultimately determined it to be a misleading clue. They reasoned that in a small community like Bonhill, it was unlikely that such a person would have remained unidentified if they were a local resident. Over 300 items of evidence from the crime scene, including clothing and biological samples, were submitted for DNA analysis. Investigators hoped that advancements in forensic technology would give new clues and potentially generate a DNA profile that could expose someone in the crime. Sticking to the belief that Caroline's killer was a local, investigators once again encouraged anyone with information, no matter how insignificant it may seem, to contact the authorities. They hoped that shifts in relationships within the community might encourage people to come forward with information. As family dynamics changed and friendships ended, secrets could be revealed. They believed that the answers to Caroline's murder lay within the communities of Renton and Bonhill. Without anything else to go with, the investigators decided to focus on the alibi of the three suspects, Robert O'Brien, Andrew Kelly, and Donna Marie Brand. The fourth suspect, Sarah Jane O'Neill, had passed away since then. They re-interviewed all people who lived at Allen Crescent in August 1996. This ultimately led the investigators to the real key witness in the case. Linda Dorian, Betty Wilson's upstairs neighbor, was in her flat that night with her 10-year-old daughter, Emma. She was waiting for a film coming on Sky Channel at midnight. But before it started, Linda heard a downstairs door opening and looked out into the street. She saw 4 people leave the house. One of the girls was pushing the buggy with 2-year-old Jamie in it. 4-year-old Archie was holding the buggy and walking alongside it. The group walked down Allen Crescent and crossed Main Street, which connects Renton to Alexandria. They then went towards the River Leven. At approximately 30 minutes after midnight, about 6 independent witnesses heard screams coming from the River Leven. They then heard a female voice saying, "I didn't say that. I didn't do that." About 40 minutes to an hour later, Linda saw the group returning with the children. She heard a door slam, followed by screaming and shouting. Someone was yelling, "That wasn't meant to happen. That went too far. How is this going to look?" This was followed by someone yelling, "The weens," which means children in Scottish. A female could also be heard wailing and sobbing. Linda's testimony eventually proved crucial in dismantling the killer's alibi. However, it was Archie Wilson's evidence that became pivotal in securing the conviction of O'Brien, Brand, and Kelly. When Archie's mother, Betty Wilson, returned home in the morning, she found their babysitter, Andrew Kelly, drying his wet trousers by the fireplace. Kelly claimed that Archie had wet himself and was also responsible for a large wet patch on the carpet. However, when Archie woke up around lunchtime, much later than usual, Betty asked him if he had urinated on the carpet. He replied, "No, Mummy, Robbie was wet." He then told her that he was woken up and taken down to the Leven River along with Jamie. The police had interviewed Archie the day after Caroline's body was found, and after speaking to a child psychologist, were advised to wait for a month at the time. In the meantime, the boys were taken to Belfast by relatives and re-interviewed there on the 26th of September. On this occasion, Archie told the police he saw Caroline being attacked down the Leven and then pushed in the water. He also saw Robbie hit Caroline with a stick and a pole. However, the one detail in particular that proved decisive was when he talked about her being hit and having metal in her eye. The boy could not have known that Caroline had an eye injury unless he had been there. When asked why Archie's testimony was not taken more seriously at the time, the investigators said that once Caroline's body was found, there were a lot of rumors. The original investigators might have thought that the boy was just picking up rumors. Apart from this oversight, the initial investigation also faced numerous obstacles. The late 1990s saw a heroin epidemic in Renton and the surrounding areas, complicating matters significantly. Several potential witnesses were criminals themselves, living chaotic lives. This made gathering reliable testimony extremely challenging. People were also scared of Robbie O'Brien, the main suspect. He came from a powerful family in the area, a family known for having a lot of control and threatening others from speaking up. This fear greatly obstructed the investigation, silencing potential witnesses and allowing the killers to escape justice for almost 30 years. The reinvestigation team sent a child psychologist a package containing all the information related to Archie and his family. The psychologist concluded that, in her opinion, Archie had experienced the traumatic event firsthand. Archie, now in his early 30s, was considered unfit to testify during the trial. However, the video evidence that Archie gave to the police officers in September 1996 was shown to the jury during trial. His mother, Betty Wilson, however, testified in court. She told the jury that Archie had told her about a fight with a little girl who had been wearing a chippy jumper. The girl fell into the River Leven after they beat her. While she doubted what Archie had said, she realized he was telling the truth when she later learned Caroline had been found in the river. Based on all the gathered evidence, police eventually arrested O'Brien, Kelly, and Brand on the 25th of November 2021. They appeared in private before Dumbarton Sheriff Court and made no plea or declaration. They were remanded in custody pending further investigation. Their charge sheet stated that they shouted and swore at Caroline Glachan, punched and kicked her on the head and body, threw bricks or similar instruments at her, and caused blunt force injuries to her head and body with instruments unknown to the prosecutor. This attack caused her to become unconscious, after which they pushed her into the river, causing her death. O'Brien was also charged with previously hurting Caroline in different places in Bonhill. He assaulted Caroline by punching, slapping her face, and by placing his hands around her neck and compressing her throat. O'Brien and Brand were also accused of previously showing hate and bad intentions towards the young girl. They appeared at the High Court in Glasgow in front of Judge Lord Braid, where all three denied the charges against them. They maintained that they were in Betty Wilson's flat overnight and didn't leave it until morning. After a 2-week trial, all three killers were found guilty of murdering Caroline in December 2023. While Robert O'Brien was the main culprit of the murderous assault on Caroline Glachan, Kelly and Brand were convicted for aiding and abetting O'Brien. In January 2024, Robert O'Brien was sentenced to serve at least 22 years in prison. Andrew Kelly was given an 18-year prison term. Donna Marie Brand was not in court in January due to illness. She was sentenced in April 2024 for at least 17 years in prison. While announcing the punishment, Judge Lord Braid described their actions as brutal, depraved, and above all, wicked. Not only did they brutally attack Caroline, but they also deliberately left her in the Leven to drown. This was the day that Caroline's mother, Margaret, had been waiting for 27 years. The death of her only child left an emptiness that will never be filled. but she is relieved that justice has finally been served for her daughter.
This has been a great day. I just can't sum up how I feel. I'm sure her dad feels the same. It'll no bring her back, but at least we know that who was responsible is serving time for it. Because for the past 25 years they've lived their life and they've had their Christmases and their birthdays, and my Caroline was in the ground, so this is a great day. Thank you. It was a good sentence. It was actually more than I was expecting, so I'm quite pleased, and I'm pleased that it's done. Now I can just, it's like a weight lifted off my shoulders, and as I said before, it's no closure, it's justice. You don't get closure. Closure's a thing that it's a void that'll never be filled, so you don't get closure. But I'm pleased the way they went the day, and I'm glad it's done.